What is up, everybody? It's Matt Johnson. We are back with another episode of Real Estate Uncensored. This is the place where you get actionable ideas, insight, and inspiration to turn your real estate career into a life of freedom. We've got an amazing guest today. We're talking about the secrets of Top Gun agents, some of the intangible things that you may not be aware of or heard about that are setting the top agents apart from everybody else, possibly including yourself if you're listening to this. So this is a really good episode to pay attention to. Greg has a fresh sheet of notes in one of his many Hobbit pads, which is what we call them, where he is getting ready to take some notes today. And we're going to jump in. We've got a really good question to start off with. But first, the junior grandmaster in the co-pilot seat, Greg McDaniel. Greg, how are you today?
Johnson, what's up, player? Dude, I am so excited to have John on the show, man. John and I met very serendipitously. He called about something totally unrelated to the podcast, but he and I started riffing, and our minds and viewpoints on real estate are just spot on with each other. So I'm super excited to have him on here, guys. You may not have heard of John before, but he's a freaking, like, he's a grandmaster ninja, black belt, Army Ranger, Navy SEAL of coaches in real estate, and he's retained his clients of 40 clients for the last, on average, 10 plus years. I am very honored to have him here, but I got to tell you something else I'm really honored about. Matt and I just got a phone call from a company called Benutech. They produce the product called Rebo Gateway that I talk about, where you can get divorces and pre-foreclosures and all this other stuff delivered to you. They like what we're doing, so Matt and I are going on their show. We'll keep you guys up to date on that. So we're just blessed and honored to be here. And John, welcome, man. I have been looking forward to this show because I know locked between your ears is a wealth of knowledge that our listeners and viewers are desperately dying to hear, and they don't even know it yet. And that's the cool part about it. So I'm ready to write notes. I hope you guys are too.
Well, first of all, welcome, John. Thanks for being with us today. That's quite an intro from Greg. Good Lord.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I'm blown away by the intro, but I figured you'd lie about other things too, right?
That's a good response.
It's gonna be fun.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So, John, Greg alluded to the coaching, but tell everybody kind of where you've come from, a little bit about your background, where you're based out of, and all that good stuff.
Well, I started out in Philadelphia, 1983. So, I'm dating myself. In 1983, got into the real estate business. At the time, Century 21, believe it or not, was the big, franchise du jour. It was the big kid on the block. And I just kind of found my niche in the real estate business. I was dating a girl at the time, and she said, you'd be a great real estate salesperson. And the rest is history. I got my license. I got into real estate, and within a couple of months, I was the number one Century 21 agent in Pennsylvania within about 90 to 120 days. And I cut my teeth knocking on doors, which, by the way, guys, is still an old school lead generation methodology that produces enormous results. I coach a guy up in Chicago, Thomas Domasic, and Thomas is he's probably the number one RE/MAX agent in the Chicago area. Well, it's think about it, third largest metropolitan area in the country. And Thomas, from door knocking alone, collected 83 commission checks in 2016. So
Whoa.
It's pretty awesome, right?
Just from doors.
Mm-hmm. Just from doors. So expired doors, but door knocking nonetheless.
There's the difference.
Yep.
He's actually going to meeting people belly to belly, face to face. He's not picking up the handy dandy conventional, phone here and hoping to God that someone else picks up. He's actually going out, taking the time to meet these people. Incredible.
He and I developed a strategy that is incredibly effective that might be helpful for your callers. But what he does is he pulls in the driveway. And this is at dinner time. He leaves the car running with the driver's side door open where the people can see it. And he's sending out a subconscious message. I'm not staying, right? He has a name badge. He knocks on the door. People come to the door. And the first thing that he says is, "Hi, I'm Thomas Domasic. I'm a local real estate agent here, Mrs. Smith, and I am terribly sorry for the intrusion." So he apologizes right off the bat. And, man, I'm telling you, this kid just kills it. Kills it.
And we can end the podcast there. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's your tip for the day.
It's one of my few original methodologies, so you might want to write that one down. I get one every 10 or so years, right?
Yeah.
The convenient thing is that it is recorded. So we do have it forever and ever.
Yeah, I'm dead meat, right?
No, that's fantastic. I love because I've never done that tactic, but I love the tactic because it's subconsciously telling the people, hey, look, I'm here for a hot second. My car's running, and if it's raining, I'm sure he doesn't have the door open. But I mean, if it's whatever else the weather is, maybe it's smoking hot out and he's still got the AC blowing, he's still got the door open, and he says, I'm terribly sorry for the interruption. He goes into his script. That is absolutely genius. I love it. I'm using that, and I am very happy with that.
Well, you can't argue with 83 commission checks from this, from this system. I mean, it's a hard thing to defense, right?
Yes. I'm not sure.
Now, is he doing
83 times?
Is he, just out of curiosity, is he doing anything unconventional from that point, or is it just the fact that it breaks down the resistance so much, and he's at their door when they're there? Now he's not trying to go through the phone and stuff. Is he just having a conventional expired kind of pre-qualification from there?
I think that's a really great question. And you guys are going to find with me that I'm a little off the rails probably in terms of what you're used to. One of the things that I really work on with my clients is their mindset going into any given set of circumstances. So, for example, if somebody is going into a listing appointment and their outcome that they want to create is to get that listing, I think that they're going to struggle. I think that if you say the outcome that I want to create is trust, then the listing is pretty much assured. And so when Thomas knocks on the door, to answer the question directly, his ideal outcome is to create enough trust to be invited back. You see, not to get his foot in the door, not to give a listing presentation, to create enough trust to be invited back. And that, guys, that makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. Trust me.
No pun intended, but yes, I'm pun. But it really is true. We've always talked about the fact, and it's very similar to what you're saying about trust. We always say you have to bring upfront value. Everyone's like, how do you close? How do you close? Do you close? We always say, how do you bring value up front? How do you create enough value so that people want to bring you back, or in your words, trust to bring you back? You don't have to close a damn thing if you bring enough trust and value up front. They'll be asking for the listing agreement, right? From you. Is that what you've seen as well, John?
Yeah, and I'm going to give you an Obi-Wan Kenobi thing here, so you might want to write it down, okay? So at the end of the day, I think as a group, we do a really good job of creating competency trust, right? So people have to trust that we're competent. Mm-hmm. I think we do a lousy job as an industry in creating integrity trust, and that's really hard to do. Right. Yeah. And so people have to trust you on both levels. They have to trust that you're a person of good character. They have to trust that you are competent to do the job. And I think that we get all amped up on the second part of trust, which is okay, but to the demise of the character trust. Well, people always say to me, well, John, how do you create that trust that you're a person of good character? And look, here's the deal, guys. And this is the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. The prospect will know far more about whether they can trust your character by the questions you ask them more than anything you can tell them, right? They will know by the questions you ask them more than anything you can tell them. And we get into a gear where, quite frankly, we don't ask enough questions. We're busy telling, right? Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, that's a mistake.
It really is. People, I get annoyed when I get talked at all the time, not involved in the conversation. People like to be involved in the conversation. And you're right. I've watched my father do this for years, John, who you will have a conversation with him, I promise.
Okay, good.
He's always said, God gave you 2 of these and 1 of these, 2 ears and 1 mouth. So constantly stay in a state of curiosity consistently and be interested in what the best possible outcome is for your client, not for your pocketbook. Yeah. And a lot of folks just always thinking about their pocketbook, how to get a sale, when you should be understanding, like you said, the character. What's your character? Is it speaking that you're willing to wait a year, 2 years, 10 years? We waited 25 years 2 years ago to get a sale. 25 years because Terry, the Grandmaster himself, to advise a family friend to stay put. Yeah. And they made like $800 or $1,000 off of that suggestion, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, you and I talked about this. I don't know if you remember because Matt told me that you're getting older and your memory's starting to slip. So God willing.
Solid burn, John. I like it. It's fun.
But
please gang up on Greg for this episode. That'd be awesome.
But Greg, when you and I had that serendipitous conversation a few weeks back, we were talking about this whole idea that in our industry, sales skills have gradually eroded to the place where, gosh, it's really tough for people now to churn non-relationship based business, especially because they don't have the skill sets that like I grew up with. When I got into this business, the deal was you were responsible for 100% of your own lead generation and 100% of your own lead conversion. There's the desk, there's the phone. Good luck, you're on your own, kind of idea. Now there's a myriad of companies lined up out there willing to take our money and who promises that they will take the heavy burden and the heavy lifting of lead generation and lead conversion off of our plates. Mm-hmm. Well, look, I think that that's effective to a point. And some of them are very good, right? I would say on the lead generation side, on the lead conversion side, not so much, right? Yeah. And guys, whoever's listening out there, you are in sales. And if you think otherwise, then maybe you ought to think about doing something else. And it requires skills. It requires skills, to be a great salesperson. Not a good salesperson, a great salesperson. Yeah. And those skill sets, it's why are my clients with me for so long? I think one of the reasons is I'm always trying to hone their skill sets in converting non-relationship based business. That's one of the reasons.
Yeah, because what you're teaching someone is, to do something that they've never been taught. Because today's day and age, we have this little handy dandy smartphone. This thing can pretty much run a freaking satellite, or probably can.
That's almost as big as my Samsung 65-inch in my family room, by the way.
Thing is holding like a mini laptop up to your head. That's why you have earbuds. Yeah. But to learn the art of sales, not just how to sell. Don't go out and just buy a book on how to sell, but it's the art and the craft and how to have a conversation, how to listen for those cues, how to sell out of value based, not out of a need. It is something that is just like you said, it's just not taught anymore because technology has stepped in and it's allowed you to take that off every plate so much.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things we were going to talk about today are the things that separate these mega agents, these top producers from everybody else. And this is one of them. It's seldom talked about. When we talk about what separates these people, we were talking before the show started, we talk about goals and we talk about lead generation systems and lead conversion systems and team building. Look, everybody's on the call who's on the call. They probably have heard, or in the podcast today. See, I'm dating myself. Right? Everybody's on the podcast today, has heard a lot of that stuff. But what I can tell you is that when you look at my clients as a group, probably at the low end, there's about 250 in GCI a year, very profitably, I might add. And on the high end, 3 million and everything in between. What I will tell you is to a person, these people have a sales process. When they go into a sales situation, they know exactly what they're doing and in what order. Right. And they're guiding that sales process every inch of the way. They're like a neurosurgeon, right? Most of us go into these situations nowadays and we maybe have a presentation, but we're kind of winging it. That's not what these pros do, man. These pros know exactly what they're doing at any given point in that interaction. And that is so important, right? That is so important.
So how do they get to John? Let's play devil's advocate here really quickly. How does someone go from a layman salesperson to an expert pro? What have you seen your clients do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to hone those skills and just become the best they can possibly be? I know there has to be a structure to it, just like yours is structured to everything else.
There is. Again, this is one of the things that I think separates out these really top gun agents. And again, the trinity for me is high production, high profitability, great quality of life. You've got to have all three. It doesn't make any sense to maybe have high profitability and high productivity and be bludgeoned at the finish line, right? That's not right. That's not the goal here, right? But here's what I'll tell you, Matt, Greg, I'm sorry. Matt's picture just popped up. That's why. Now you're back, right? You guys are messing with my mojo, just so you know.
Yes, that's right.
I just turned 60.
Right. I'm just subtly sabotaging Greg. I'm moving him off the show. One little bit at a time.
And then all of a sudden, Greg's there, right? Yeah, but to answer Greg's question, one of the best things I ever heard was by the great late Walter Payton, and I've kind of implemented what he said in my coaching practice. One of the treasures that I have is an old VHS tape of him and an interview that he did. He was a great businessman, Walter Payton. People don't realize that. He was also a great human being. When he was dying of a incurable liver disease, he had the opportunity to be put at the top of the transplant list for a liver, and he wouldn't do it. He said that he could never live with himself knowing that someone else died, and he got in there ahead of them, which I find incredibly remarkable. I mean, I just can't imagine somebody having that depth of character. Anyway, when he was talking about being a business person, he owned car dealerships and a lot of other businesses. He said that, the problem that we've got is that we want to be a millionaire, right? But we forget that maybe it's a good idea to be a thousandaire first, and then a 10,000aire, and then 100,000aire. And one of the things that I see happening out there is that people want to go from 0 to 60, and they want to do it in a year. I had a young man call me last year from New Jersey, and he was a pretty good producer. He's doing about 35, 40 transactions a year. And he said, I'm looking for a coach, and I want this coach to take me from where I am now to 200 transaction sides a year. I said, okay, it's going to take you about 3 to 5 years. And he said, no, I want a coach who's going to get me there in 1 to 2. I said, I'm the wrong guy, man. I said, because let me tell you something, young man, if that were to occur for you, it would kill you. You don't have the infrastructure. You don't have the software yet. I said, you got to get the software, and then, move from where you are to maybe 75 and then 100 transactions. When we look at the research on goal setting is a really funny area because I think it's injected with a lot of hoopla, a lot of puffery, a lot of emotional stuff. Mm-hmm. When you look at the research, and I'm an empiricist, I look at the research and then I formulate an opinion. The best research I found was done by Dennis Waitley, Dr. Dennis Waitley. Dennis Waitley's biggest claim to fame is he wrote a book entitled The Psychology of Winning, which was on the New York Times bestsellers list for a number of years back in the 80s into the 90s. And he was also the head psychologist for the U.S. Olympic team when the Olympics were held in L.A. And the most notable athlete out of those Olympics was a gal by the name of Mary Lou Retton. She was a gymnast. And so he was the staff psychologist for them. He also did research with POWs, with world-class athletes, world-class business on this whole area of goal setting. Now, the information is a little difficult to wade through. I have one of my degrees is in psychology, so I can wade through this stuff and kind of,
sift it out.
Yeah. And but here's the deal. He talked about this thing called the Goldilocks zone. See, we get really obsessed with this idea of quantum leaps. I want to go from where I am to quadruple my production, and we get all hyped up on it. And what we do more often than not is we set ourselves up for failure and disappointment. I did it for years in my practice. And the problem is when we do that, and there's 3 things that he said are going to cause underachievement. First one is no goals at all. Duh, right? The second is setting goals too low, and the third is setting goals too high. Right. And we cause this underachievement. And what he said is the Goldilocks zone, based on his research, was about 25% more of our best performance. And then if we set our sights at 20 to 25% more than our best performance, well, heck, man, you're doubling yourself every 4 years. And that's how I kind of take my clients through the process. Now, do people have quantum leaps? Yes, they do. But I can tell you more often than not, they also have a lot of issues with those quantum leaps.
Yeah, it's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable. It's you mentioned like the software, and I don't remember who. I can't attribute it to the right person, but I was reading this either in one of Tim Ferriss's book or it was The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, or one of those. He was talking about he quoted a famous, I think it was a computer scientist and entrepreneur, and basically said something to the effect of any business will break every time you grow in multiples of 3 or 10. So whether it's going from 1 staff person to 3 staff people, going from 10 to 30, going from 30 to 300, like whatever it is, every multiple of 3 and 10, it will break everything in your business. So like this guy that wants to go from 40 transactions to 200 transactions, he doesn't realize his business is going to break when he hits 80 deals and 100.
Along with his back. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, exactly. but even if you grow it with all the systems and like, let's say you brought on, scalable leveraged lead generation systems, and you got all the bells and whistles that all the top mega teams have and stuff like that, he wouldn't have the software, the leadership ability, the accountability, the meeting rhythm, and all the structure and stuff that those guys have that they've developed out of the pain of them growing incrementally, and adding another 40 deals a year or so here and there. I mean, it's Jeff Cohn is probably one of the few examples of guys that have grown in that range and done it over the course. I think you quoted him, 4 to 5 years to go from 40 to 200. Jeff went from 40 to almost 600, and it took him 4 years. And that's on an economic upswing. Obviously, that's a part of it that we have to take into account. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pain, and I know that from knowing him and talking through that there's a lot of pain and suffering and humiliation and embarrassment and trying and tweaking and failing repeatedly over and over and over again to hit that kind of result. And most people, and that probably that young man included, has no idea what they're getting themselves into and is not prepared for that level of experimentation.
Yeah, I subject myself to the same accountability and coaching that my clients subject themselves to. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I believe in, it's just my core belief, and if there are any coaches or aspiring coaches listening, I would very respectfully and with a servant's heart say that about what I'm about to share is something that maybe you want to think about. Who holds the coach accountable? Why is it that a coach doesn't have the same accountability in play for him or herself? And I think that the most important question that somebody could ask a coach if he or she's thinking about going into a coaching program is, who coaches you, right? Who holds you accountable? Who's the coach's coach, right? But the point I'm trying to make is my coach always talks about the Aesop's fable, the tortoise and the hare, right? And he always says the tortoise always wins, right? No matter which version of that story that you hear, the tortoise always wins. So the race doesn't always go to the swiftest. I mean, there are people who call me and my heart breaks because they're in the eyes of the world, doing all of this mega production, but they're frightened. They're living lives of quiet desperation. They're not profitable, and they don't know what to do. And I think to myself, it would be easier to burn the barn down and start again than to try to fix this mess. So I people who make those quantum leaps and they do it successfully, I would tell you that they're out there and that they certainly can do it with finesse and land in a good place. But they are the exceptions, guys. Trust me. They are not the rule. And, it's sort of like, I want to be Bill Gates, kind of mentality. Well, look, not everybody gets to be Bill Gates, but you get to be really good, right? And I don't like the saying the sky's the limit. I like the saying how high is high. Well, it depends. Your God-given talents and abilities, your levels of desire and commitment, your levels of discipline, these things all, play into how high is high. But trust me when I tell you, I've been around a long time. The sky is not the limit. That's the wrong mindset. The mindset is how high is high, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you,
it's different. It's different for everybody.
Yeah. Looking at where you've come from, and not just how far you have to go, or trying to put yourself and compare yourself to other people and trying to get to their level. Looking at how far you've come and taking pleasure in that. That's one thing that Tim Ferriss pointed out in Tools of Titans, was to spend time in gratitude, looking back at how far you've come, rather than always being so future focused that you're never happy with where you're at because you're not at mastery level at whatever you're trying to get to. And that's hard to keep in mind sometimes.
It is. It's hard to keep in perspective.
It is. I look at my own personal life in a very small way. I mean, a year ago, my house was nowhere near what it looks like today, right? But I mean, I could play the woe is me game because, my other business partners got big ass friggin' houses and I have a 1-bedroom condo. But where I've made tremendous growth in different personal issues in my life. My house actually feels like a home now. My business, we're always growing a business. I'm never happy with my business, but we're always growing in my business, and we're putting the right people in the right seats on the bus to get to where I want to be. But you're right, John. If we went from where our production is now to 200-300 units, dude, we don't have the infrastructure for that. We just don't. And my team manager, Eileen, who's not here, is pregnant with twins. Shit, got a problem there, And so,
I'll pray for you.
we need it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But do you think the main thing, and tell me if I'm totally off basis here, which Matt will think I am, but I'm going to, slap him down verbally.
Oh, stop it.
You shush. But, is it an ego issue when it comes to coaches not getting coached? Do they think that they've arrived at the top of Everest and they don't need any more help? Or is it just that they don't have enough time? I mean, what is it?
I think that some of it is with ego. Look, I've worked for other coaching companies, and I would tell you, ego is alive and well in this business. And there's no doubt about it. So I think that that's some of it. I do believe that oftentimes it's a situation where it's never occurred to them that maybe that's a good idea. I attended a leadership conference, which is one of my passions. Is one of the things that I hope we get a chance to talk to and talking to people's lives today about leadership, because it's sorely missing out there. And there's people who start teams, team leader, but they really don't have their arms around what leadership means. Well, anyway, at this leadership seminar, one of the things that broke my heart was that, according to the research, and I'm not going to get into that many people out there, especially us guys more than the ladies, right? We don't really have relationships that go deep with other men. We are out there trying to, be the Lone Ranger, Look, even the Lone Ranger had Tonto, right? I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, he wasn't trying to do this dance alone. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if people really stopped and thought about it in terms of who holds the coach accountable, that they would hopefully discover that about the only thing that we can do successfully alone, the only thing that we can do alone and be really great at is failure, right? That's really what we can do great alone. And so we all need that anchor in our lives. I intentionally, and look, guys, just for the record, I have probably failed as much as I've succeeded. I remember a number of years ago, there was this dude that was interviewing me, and he had one of those radio voices, and he was like, "Well, John, tell your audience about some of your successes." And I said, "Do you want them to learn anything?" And he said, "Of course, that's why we're here." And I said, "Well, ask me about my failures, because I didn't learn a damn thing from my successes." Really, right? They all came on the heels of my failures, right?
Yeah, awesome.
But where I'm going with this is that I have learned to intentionally seek counsel from older men in my life. And if you're a woman, I would suggest that you seek counsel from other women. Well, depending on the area, right? Look, if you're seeking counsel in your relationship and you're a man or a woman, stick with a guy or a lady. Business counsel, you can probably cross over gender-wise, but that gets a little hairy. But at the end of the day, I've always sought out counsel in my adult life since I was in my late 40s from men old enough to be my father, who are going to hold me accountable, who aren't going to put up with my crap and listen to my BS, right? Mm-hmm. In the spiritual area, in the business area, in health and fitness areas, I intentionally do that. Why, right? Why? Because going at it alone is not an option. It's not an option. So who holds the coach accountable? And if you're thinking about coaching, I would say this respectfully, and again, with a servant's heart, ask that coach if they're being coached. Yeah, I think that's a great question.
The other day, I used to get coached a lot, but I don't get coached now. I'm basically coaching myself because I'm constantly learning and everything else. So I have a friend of mine, her name is Lily. She lives on the peninsula, and she's an agent. And I don't know, she's getting coached by a guy named Gino Bafari as well, the head of Berkshire Hathaway now, was the head of Intero Realty.
I don't know, no. I don't know that name, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't get out much.
That's true. But she asked me some very simple questions the other day, and it felt so good to be asked the questions. They were accountability questions. What were your 3 wins for the week? Where do you plan on going this week? She sent me a whole breakdown of what she and Gino work on in regards to, these different areas of her life. And I'm like, yeah, it feels so freaking good to be asked those questions, because then you're being held accountable as well.
Can y'all see that?
Yes, there it is. Accountability questions. I like that. Either these are yours or these are something you got from.
No, these are mine.
Those are yours.
And
So,
we start every coaching.
Well, and you talk about people staying with you. I think that's the two reasons that I see, and I think this goes for any type of coaching business or like a consulting relationship is you've got the skill building part, and then you've got the accountability part. To me, that is the two areas of value for like a long-term coaching relationship. Is it has to be those two things, because otherwise, I mean, you can get like there's only so much content, just training or just information that you can get from somebody before you're overwhelmed with their viewpoint and people get bored and they want to move on to something else. So if somebody's going to stay in that type of coaching relationship, it has to be that combination of going really deep on some sort of skill that you're working with them to build, and then the accountability to reinforce your own like goal setting structure and have somebody else come over the top and make sure that you're sticking with your own structure that you kind of agreed to for yourself, because that's where it's easy to get ourselves off of the hook, so to speak.
Yeah, man, I agree with you with one footnote. I think there's a third leg to the stool, at least for me. Okay. And the third leg of the stool is this. And I will tell you, this is just in 2017 here. So I had one client who was diagnosed with cancer, right? I had another client who entered into a partnership and it started going south and it was really causing a lot of problems. Another client who is having a terrible time with one of his children who is sitting in prison because of a drug addiction. I could go on and on. But the point is that you know, when somebody comes to the coaching session with something like that on the, on the table, and you say to them as a coach, "Oh, well, Matt, I'm so sorry to hear about that. I'll pray for you. Let's talk about lead generation," right?
Oh God, no.
You know that trust me, that dog ain't gonna hunt. I mean, sometimes, you at least I do. I get involved in coaching sessions where the entire time we're discussing what's going on in their lives personally. And, you can't, I apologize for the guys. I actually did unplug the phone. I kid you not. I don't know why it's ringing, but on Grandma Gualtieri's grave, I did unplug that phone, but because I didn't want this to happen. So I apologize to whoever's on the podcast, but here's the deal for me, there's no compartmentalization. If people are having major issues in their personal lives, and as a coach, you don't get down in the mire with them, then you're not much of a coach. When I first got into the coaching business, and this is my second original thought of my life. So I use the metaphor, that my job was to stand up on the riverbank and scream down to everybody in the river to get out of the current and tell them how to do it, right? And then I grew in I guess in wisdom and experience, and then I figured, my job was to get down on that riverbank and start plucking them out one by one. And now I realize that my job is to get in the mire with them and get dirty and walk the walk with them. I often joke and say, now that I'm really successful at coaching, I only work half days, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it's evolved. So I thought, well, look, I'm going to be a coach and I don't have to work nights and weekends. Look, I was on the phone Saturday morning. I was on the phone Sunday morning. People have issues. People have problems, and it goes beyond the money. Look, if I wanted to make money, just money, I'd go back to selling real estate, right? I mean, really. But that third leg of the stool is probably more than anything else, Matt, the reason why people hang with me, because they know that I will get down in the mire with them, and that they're safe with me, and that I will always tell them the truth, and I will always give them the best counsel I can if I was in their moccasins. And that matters to people.
Yeah, it really does matter a lot, especially if you're sitting there at a listing presentation, or you're out with a buyer and you start getting into deeper conversations. You don't just go right back to the real estate side of it. You keep getting invested into that client and their wants, needs, desires, hopes, and dreams. Because at the end of the day, like we were talking about right here, if they know that you're on their team, you're gonna walk a mile in their shoes. I would stay with someone forever if they were going to do that with me. I mean, it's just incredible that people, a lot of the times, where agents use clients as ATM machines. We use them for a little bit, they spit out some money, and they're on to the next ATM machine. And unfortunately, not too many people want to get invested. And John, something that I do is called the McDaniel Challenge. It's a free coaching that I do about 4 nights a week, and I'm booked out a year for this. And I spend hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours on the phone with them. But we're not talking about superficial stuff, man. We're telling jokes. We're getting involved. I'm hearing the down and dirty of whatever's going on in life. And that's where the true bond and the true, trust is built. And then when the trust is built, then people are willing to work with you and spend money with you, even though mine is free. But I mean, it's very powerful when that moment takes place. And it is kind of like an aha moment. You're like, oh, okay, this person really does trust me.
Yeah, this is true. And what I would tell you is that my goal for my clients is that I ultimately become the cheapest person on their payroll. Really, that it's, it's not even a consideration anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell you that happens most of the time. Otherwise, I would have a much bigger churn rate. And guys, I'm very grateful for that. I don't ever take that for granted. I understand that it's something special. I understand that it's something that's very rare. Like I said, I've worked for other coaching companies, and the shelf life of a client in those companies, they're lucky if it's a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got
Yeah.
people with you 8-10 years on average. I mean, that is really something. And I don't ever take that for granted. I every morning, and listen, I would tell you guys this. What's the difference between a saint and a sinner? Do you know? Saint and a sinner. So a saint has a past and a sinner has a future, right? So I'm no saint. Trust me. I'm no choir boy is one of my favorite. But I do begin and end each day on my knees because I understand. I understand that this is a privilege and an honor, and that each day is a gift, and that when people are put under your care, and when you're in a leadership position like I am, it's a very, very serious responsibility, and you cannot take it lightly, and you're going to be held to a higher standard. And if you don't like that in a leadership position, then go put your application in at the Home Depot, really.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit on the leadership side, because I think agents, especially until they come to the point where they start hiring people, they kind of dismiss the kind of leadership. They'll focus on like personal development, self-development, stuff like that, but they don't think of it as a leadership kind of a skill set that they're developing until they come to the point where they try to hire somebody and they realize they're horribly incompetent in leadership. But it's the problems were there the whole time. They just didn't realize them. They're not leading their clients either. That was a great point that we had. Who was it? It was the two guys out of Myrtle Beach, and Jeremy and Scott Tremblay from the Tremblay group down in South Carolina made this great point. Their whole mantra, their whole outlook on developing their agents is teaching their agents how to lead the clients. Right. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about leadership a little bit. What are some of the things that you teach your clients in terms of leadership, even outside of just leading their own teams, just in terms of themselves, developing themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that all leadership begins with self-leadership. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jim Rohn.
Oh, yeah.
May he rest in peace. But he used to have one of his great sayings, one of his great quotes was, so you want to be a millionaire, so you want to lead people, and you can't even clean out your own garage. Who's kidding who, right? And so at the end of the day, if you don't have enough in the way of self-leadership, you will by default not be able to lead others. It's just not going to happen. And so where I begin with people is, are you leading yourself? Are you keeping the promises that you've made to yourself? Are you keeping the commitments that you've made to yourself? Mm-hmm. Right? You have, in all areas, not just in this business, right? Are you keeping your health and fitness commitments? Are you keeping your spiritual commitments? Are you keeping your relational commitments? Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can't do that, you have no business leading, and you will ultimately fail. And it's not that I take any pleasure in saying that, but it's just a fact.
No, it is the truth. 100%, John. One of the things that I say to myself all the time is that people will say, well, Greg, how can you keep a calendar? How can you do whatever else? I say, because everything that I put into a calendar or I say I'm going to do, that's, and if it's just for me, if I break my promise to myself, how can I expect anyone to keep their word to me if I can't even keep my word to me?
You can't. You can't, and you don't deserve to if that's an issue. And look, that's really hard. Now, is anybody 100%? No, none of us are perfect, but we don't look for a standard of perfection. We look for a standard of excellence. Are you doing it most of the time? And it's not a function of whether or not you fall off the wagon, because you will. It's a function of how long it takes you to get back on the wagon. Now, one of the things that I have struggled with mightily in my coaching practice, because my clients struggle with it mightily. If you're working with me and you want to build a team and you want to be in a leadership position, it's a little different than other coaching programs, I'm sure, because I really dig down deep about whether or not you're ambivalent about being a leader. Right? Do you have any hesitation at all? Do you want to be on the fence? You kind of want to be a leader, right? Or do you want to be a leader? Because if you want to be a leader, you're going to have to be held to a higher standard. You are going to be responsible for others, and you are going to have to lead by example. Period. End of discussion. If you can't do those things, then stay a solo agent with an assistant, because you aren't going to make it in leadership. It never ceases to amaze me how mightily my clients struggle with really embracing what this means. I will just use the word, and I mean it very literally. It's a sacred trust. When you step into a leadership position and you've got people under your care and under your counsel, you have families and you have children and you have people who have to pay mortgages and everything else, and you better take it seriously. Because it's no longer just about you. It's about them. It's about us. And you hear all these, there's no I in team. There's all these meaningless platitudes, but do you really know what it means? The other thing that I will tell you that people struggle mightily with, let's say they get that piece right. When I talk to team members, because I work, one of the other things that I do is I work with the team leaders, I work with the ISAs, I work with the admin people. I like I said, I get in there and I get dirty, man. And
good.
I'm pretty tired at the end of the day. My wife says at the end of the day, honey, at the end of the day, I can't even talk to you. You're a waste product. I said, thanks. I appreciate that. Makes me, like, my self-esteem really gone up now, right?
You're a waste product.
The thing that really amazes me is when I talk to team members and I say, I need to ask you a question, Mr. Buyer Agent. I need to ask you a question, Mr. ISA or Ms. ISA. I need you to ask you a question, listing coordinator or closing coordinator. Can you articulate clearly for me exactly what your team leader expects of you? Can you tell me that? What I'll normally get is a job description. Look, I know their freaking job description. I've been in this game 30 years. I didn't ask your job description. I asked what your team leader expects of you. Exactly. They don't know. Well, see, that's a failure of leadership. If people don't know exactly what's expected of them, how can you expect them to meet that standard, right? So, for example, when I had my practice, I firmly believed that I could only hold my people accountable to, and I could only expect, and this is one of those Obi-Wan Kenobi moments here, Greg, so you want to write this one down, right?
I'm doing that right now.
I could only hold them accountable to, and I could only expect from them things that they had control over. I could not say, you have to have this many buyer agency agreements signed this month, or you have to have so many agreements of sale under contract this month, or you had to conduct this many buyer interviews this month. We cannot control those things directly. What I do believe is that we should set goals around those areas, but you cannot hold people accountable to that which they cannot directly control. It's a mistake. It's a big mistake.
So how do you know the difference on that? How do you know what they can control and what they can't control? Because people would say, well, my conversion numbers, if I do X amount of calls, then I'm going to get X amount of clients, I'm going to get X amount of blah, blah, blah. So in reality, they can't control. What can they control? They can control the number of calls. They can control the number of prospecting hours they spend. They can control their calendar.
Their
for the most part. their attitude, their mental mindset, where are you and all that stuff, their environment. They can control their environment for the most part. So what are some things that I missed? That where can people start? Where's that basis they can go? I can control this in my life for sure. The rest of it is not controllable.
Okay, so this is going to vary from practice to practice, from team to team.
Right.
But this was my metric. Okay. Now, let's begin with what I call. Are you ready for a $25 word, guys? Are you ready? Yeah.
Yep.
The preponderance of lead conversion, right? The pecking order of lead conversion. All right. So we start out with this thing called a lead. We convert that lead to a prospect. We convert that prospect to a client, and we convert that client to a raving fan. That's how we want to roll, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on my team, I knew that based on the metrics, one of the things that my team agents could control is that they could put 2 solid prospects into their pipeline every week. I knew that there was enough in the way of inbound opportunity that they can convert enough of those leads to put 2 solid prospects into their pipeline every week. For me, right, it was 4 solid, in my, my later years of doing business. I was the team leader and the lead listing agent. But for me, it was 4 solid listing prospects in my pipeline every week. I believe that we can control that within reason. So if I said to you, Greg, here's the deal, man. San Francisco boy, here's the way it's going to roll, right?
Okay.
If between now and the end of the week, you haven't put 4 new listings on the market, I'm going to roll out to San Francisco. I'm going to throw you in the trunk, and I'm going to push you off the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
Fuck, I'm screwed.
Right.
My inventory is super low.
You might as well say to me, come out here now and push my sorry ass off the Golden Gate Bridge, because I can't control that, right?
Uh-huh.
But if I said to you, Greg, by the end of this week, you better have 2 solid new seller prospects in your pipeline, or it's sorry ass off the Golden Gate Bridge. You can control that, right?
Yeah.
Listen, please don't take this as a braggadocious statement, but if I flew out to San Francisco tonight and I said, Greg, just give me the list of expireds, give me the FSBOs, just show me where the information is, I guarantee you by the end of the week, I would have 2 solid listing prospects in your pipeline. Let's talk about what differentiates a lead from a prospect. Well, a lead is just a suspect, right? Mm-hmm. Prospect is someone with whom you've had a substantive conversation. You've qualified them as to their DNA, desire, need, ability, and you have what I call a solid upfront contract with that individual. In other words, everybody knows what's going to happen next. See, I know that I could come out there and do 2. Well, if there are 2 solid prospects that you're putting in your pipeline every week, right, and you work 50 weeks a year, that's 100 solid prospects that you've put into your pipeline over the course of the year. Look, man, half to 70% of them are going to end up in commission bill. Right? Mm-hmm. No, there's no doubt about it. And see, that we can control. I believe that. I controlled it for myself. My team, I controlled it with my team members. I have clients, and that's the standard that they set for the people on their team, right? Mm-hmm. So when you ask one of my agents, what does John expect of you? John expects me to put 2 solid prospects into my pipeline every week, right? Mm-hmm. That's what he expects. If you ask a closing coordinator, okay, what is your team leader expect of you? The answer should be, what my team leader expects of me is that once a transaction is consummated, I'm going to do everything required to get that transaction to the settlement table, perhaps with the exception of negotiating home inspection issues. Some team leaders still try to do that. And in the process, create a raving fan. You see, and this all goes back to Mac's question on leadership. See, our people don't know this stuff. They don't know what's expected of them. They can't clearly articulate it. Big mistake.
Yeah, well, it's a lack of. It goes back to the leader and our own lack of clear thinking on it.
Yeah.
We have very cloudy definitions, even in our own mind, of what we want out of the people that are on our team. And so, of course, then that cloudiness works its way down the ranks to them, because we have not taken the time to stand back and really clearly think about how each team member kind of fits into it. And everybody has these kind of fuzzy ideas of goal settings. And to take it back to the goal setting conversation, I love how you focus on things that you can control, because to me, that's the bit. And this is why I yelled at Greg. We actually did an episode called Two Wildly Different Ideas on Goal Setting. We actually did a whole episode on this, because Greg, you come from kind of the other school, which is like set big goals and do everything you can to achieve them. And if you fall short, great, you did more than you probably would have. I'm from the exact opposite, which is you only focus on what you can control, and you commit to sustainable minimums, is what Pasquale calls it, who we had on the show. I think you guys are getting that phenomenally well, because you guys have that mentality of not only for your people, but for yourself. Focus on what you know you can control. As your skills grow, that sphere of things you control gets bigger, but in the beginning, you might only have control over the number of hours or minutes that you put into prospecting before you get your skills up to the point where you can control how many prospects you put into your pipeline, for example. But focusing on what you control. And if you start with that as the baseline for how you hold yourself accountable, it's a lot easier to scale that out to other people, because the process is the same. It's clear thinking and holding yourself accountable, and then holding other people accountable only to the things you can control.
And I would like to add one footnote to this, in terms of leadership, so the three things that I would love people to take away is, number one, leadership begins with self-leadership. If you can't hold yourself accountable, that's a big problem. Number two is that people need to have a really clear idea of what's expected of them, and what is expected of them should be only that which they can control. And the third one I'm going to steal from Stephen Covey, may he rest in peace. I mean, the poor guy got hit, on a bicycle of all things. To me, he's one of my heroes. And Covey used to say that managers, right, are concerned that people are doing things the right way, right? Managers are obsessed and concerned that people are doing things right. Leaders are concerned that people are doing the right things. Leaders are concerned that people are doing the right things. And guys, you both been around this business long enough to know that there's only a handful of things that fundamentally get us paid, right?
Yeah.
There's only a handful of things. And the more time we can spend doing those things, if anybody wants to know what they are, this is the short list I came up with. The first one's very controversial, but we're not going to argue it today for the sake of time, and that is attend closings. I believe that that's one of the best things that you can do. Okay,
absolutely,
to create raving fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
number two, negotiate contracts. Right. Number three are presentations of any kind. That would be a listing presentation, a price reduction presentation, showing property, a buyer interview, presentations of any kind. Number four, following up the leads on the leads already on the vine. So many of us generate leads and then we let them rot on the vine because we don't follow up. And then five would be create new leads, create new prospects, I should say. And number six is, if you're a team leader, is lead your team. Really, when it comes down to it, that's what we get paid to do, right? And the more time that we can spend engaged in those handful of activities, the more our pay is going to go up, right? And we get pulled down all kinds of rabbit holes. Just before I came on this podcast, I was talking to a client on the phone, and he was thinking about having his ISA also perform some listing coordinator duties, and he asked me what I thought about that. And I said, well, what my experience has been is that one of those activities is a process activity and the other one is a production activity. And people will typically, if they're riding two horses, default to the process activity. And you're going to lose production if you do that, right? Because why? That ISA is doing lead follow-up and lead generation activities, right? And that's going to go out the window. Yep. So leaders are concerned that their people are doing those things. Now, at the back of the house, it's different. At the back of the house, meaning closing coordinator, transaction coordinator, whatever you want to call it, listing coordinator, those people are in the service orientation. Their job is to what? Create raving fans, right? That's the difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, good, because it's a damn good story. I mean, it's you've been able to keep Matt and I pretty much silent for almost a full hour, which is nearly impossible. And both of us have sat there. Even if you've watched our faces, we aren't just zoning out. We're intently listening to you both, taking active notes on this, because what you're going over is I just wish we could do this for 2 to 3 hours, because I would love to glean more knowledge off of you. And what you've given people should be a beginning of a roadmap of where to start. I mean, you start with integrity trust, character trust. This all starts there. You gave a great book, The Psychology of Winning, so people can get out there and kind of really understand that. You've talked about, not being a boss, but being a leader, getting down in the trenches and in the muck, being willing to invest yourself and your time into their time and their lives, not just talking about, and sticking to your timelines of, well, you got an hour with me, so let's talk about, door knocking in your numbers. If they're having a problem with their spouse, get into the weeds with their spouse, forget about the fucking numbers for a little while. Let's talk about what's affecting you, because if this is clean and clear up here, your production will take care of itself. Because if you have got something deep and dark, building, it's going to spill out in a negative way into your business. I love the, who coaches the coach. I want to figure that one out, because if they're getting bad intel, you're going to get bad intel. It's like you want to drink a clean cup of water, but you fill it full of muddy water. Well, damn, I got muddy water in my brain. And that's just going to lead to a bad psychology, bad mindset, bad production, bad everything else. I mean, there's just so much in here, guys. Please go back and rewatch this like 10 times. And you might be able to get everything that John gave to you in this. This is absolutely epic. But John, what was the DNA? Go over that again one time.
Yeah, so the difference between a lead and a prospect, the lead is just a suspect. A prospect is someone with whom you've had a substantive conversation. You've qualified that individual as to their DNA, desire, need, ability, right? And you have a solid upfront contract with that individual, meaning everybody knows exactly what's going to happen next. The best way I can describe an upfront contract is to tell you what it isn't. It isn't, well, Greg, it was really nice chatting with you. I know you're not going to be ready to do anything until probably after Labor Day, so I'll follow up with you then. Are you freaking kidding me? Really? Right? If somebody did that on my team, they would be forgiven once, and then the second offense, they would be executed. Seriously.
Take them on the back.
All right. So what's the right approach for that scenario? What would you like to see happen? So that everybody knows what the next step is.
Okay. So obviously it's situational dependent, right? It depends on what the person is, but typically what I tell my clients as a rule of thumb, and the way that I coach their team agents, is that you want to have another contact with that person within a week for some reason. One of the great takeaways I'll give everybody real quickly here is that if you take a look at NAR's stats right now, the vast majority of people want to do searches on their smartphones. Home buyers want to do searches on their smartphones, right? The problem with that is that you've got people using the apps from the big boys, Zillow, Truly, Realtor.com, Redfin, on and on it goes. And by definition, then your prospect is going to be consistently and deliberately exposed to other agents, right? Because those companies are in the. So one of the things that I teach people is, look, find a phone app. If your MLS doesn't have one, or your lead generation platform doesn't have one, get the home scouting app through your mortgage company and get people using that app. So the reason that, listen, Greg, I know you're not going to be ready to do anything till after Labor Day, but can I make a suggestion to you? Talk to them about the phone app. So listen, what I like to do, I'd like to call you in a week from now just to make sure you got that phone app loaded up and you're ready to go. And I tell them, the reason that it's in their best interest to use that phone app is because on those sites, I heard a staggering statistic. Literally 2/3 of the information is inaccurate on those sites, right? Where if we can get them hooked up with a phone app that's direct to our MLS, they're going to get accurate information in real time. So that's like a really good reason to call them back in a week. So that's just one example there, Matt, of finding a reason to reconnect with them in a week, right? And everybody knows when it's going to happen and the time, and you get it. You get the idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. Yeah, so it's coming up with a real authentic reason to keep in touch, and you're basically setting an appointment with them. Not necessarily that they're, not a firm appointment in the sense it's going to be on their calendar, but it is on yours to reach out to them and follow up, and they're expecting you to call.
Yeah, this was one of the areas, by the way, in my career that we don't have time to talk about, that I was epically failing at. I was working so hard to generate the leads and convert them to prospects, and I was just getting killed. I had to learn how to not get killed anymore, right?
Yeah. I think just that script of like 2/3 of the data on those big boy apps, is wrong. It's misleading. There's inaccuracies. I had a client of mine the other day. He hit me up. He was like, "Hey, tell me some information about this property." It had been sold for 7 months.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's remarkable. But the bottom line is that their apps are snazzy and sexy and blah 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 blah. But they're not very accurate. So excuse me. If you can get people, prospects to use your phone app, it's legit. It's hopefully going to be a phone app that's branded to you and not 900 other agents who are your competition, and it gives you a legitimate reason, not an excuse, to reconnect with them the following week. You see,
fantastic.
You leave it dangling, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Man, that was really good. So, John, I don't know if you intentionally did this or not, but you left us off. Well, you started us off with a really good tactic with expired listings, and then you left us off with an incredibly good tactic for buyer lead follow-up. And so it's always nice to bookend things that way, to get into the strategy stuff in the middle and bookend it with some really good practical, down-to-earth, tactical stuff. So I love when that happens naturally. Usually I have to steer the conversation that way and force that out of the guest, but I love how you went there naturally. But tell people how they can connect with you, learn more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so my website is coachingforbusinessandlife.com, www.coachingforbusinessandlife.com. My website is literally a new website is about a week away from launch. I've got the old website up, but it's still very adequate, and you can see my client testimonials on there. All of those people are still with me. You can download my story. There is a story there, and I think that speaks volumes about who I am and how I arrived where I am on this journey. And you can shoot me an email or call me. I mean, I'm the only coach, guys. I don't. That's why nobody knows who I am.
Wait, how will I ever get you through your labyrinth of other coaches? Yeah.
You won't get a coach. You'll typically get me. I have a couple of part-time employees. That's about it. Yeah. I roll lightly.
So now you guys know why when I talked to John on a 20-minute drive from Berkeley back to Danville, I'm like, holy Christ, man, I got to get this guy on the show, because I mean we did this. We took your fingernail and just scraped barely across the knowledge that you have. There's so much deeper that you can go. So guys, I highly recommend reach out to John if you're looking for a coach. This guy will blow your mind. If he hasn't blown your mind already, then you got to go get your brain checked. There's something wrong with you. But
Greg, how does one connect with us?
They can stalk us, Matt, especially you. Use trench coats. Don't use anything digital. Just follow them around real creepily. So guys, follow me on
You're
Facebook.
You're going to see a hell of a lot of boring if they follow me around. Like, they're going to be sitting outside my house for a long time.
He's still doing podcasts, son of a bitch. You guys follow me and Matt on Facebook. Follow Matt on Pursuing the Results across all platforms. You can go to Instagram for me is McDanielCallahan.realestate is my Instagram, which I absolutely suck at. Snapchat is REU444. You can follow my snaps, which I'm really trying to do. And then, guys, follow me here on Facebook if you want to see interviews like this with John, if you want to see my live prospecting Monday through Thursday at 4:30 p.m. or another interview that I do. Follow me here. Do not friend me, because you go in purgatory. Nobody likes purgatory. But you guys, just unbelievable. I mean, John, thank you again, man. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blessing. And Matt, I like him. Can we keep him? We need to have him back on.
Yeah, we'll bring him back on. Very soon.
Guys, listen, it was a lot of fun, and I mean this from my heart. I'm honored that you had me on. It was a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Matt, what do we have coming up?
Oh, goodness, man. We've got Chris Voss, international FBI hostage negotiator, coming up on the show on Wednesday. We've got Jeff Cohn, who I briefly mentioned the other, very early in the show. So Jeff and the flagship team there in Omaha have sold 601 homes in 2016. And so we're going to talk about, I believe we're going to talk about something. I came up with the title for it yesterday, and now it's not where I expected it to be. Anyway, we're
talk about something.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something. We're not going to talk about team building and all that stuff. We're going to get into the weeds and talk about what agents can do to get started and move further on that journey to becoming a top producer. So that's what we're going to talk about with Jeff, because before he was a team leader, he was also a top producer. He actually got in the trenches and did the work first, and then was able to help people out of the muck and onto the beachhead of success, like John talked about. So that's what we'll talk about with Jeff Cohn on Friday. So we've got two really, really big interviews coming up, guys. Like Greg, you mentioned that we do not advertise the show. So all the growth of the show has come from people either stumbling onto us on YouTube and iTunes and places like that, or they hear about the show from you guys that are already listening or watching the show. So we appreciate it, guys. If you don't already subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher to get the audio versions, make sure to do that. That way all the future episodes are on your phone automatically. Same thing for YouTube if you want to get notified when the latest videos go up. But otherwise, guys, go to our website and check out what we've got there. There's links to everything we've got going on. We're in between classes right now, so we don't have anything for you guys to sign up for. We don't have anything to promote. We're working on our next course, which is called Getting Now Business. So that's for people that are kind of either new to the game or relocating or want to start their business over from scratch and need to parachute into an area and do things that will get now business and set them up correctly for the long term. So that's what we're working on that class right now, but there's nowhere to send you guys to sign up for that yet. So hang tight on that.
But they can do, Matt. If you guys have a referral for me for the San Francisco East Bay for real estate, I encourage you wholeheartedly. Give me a call, guys, 925-915-1978. Matt, I haven't given out my cell phone in like half a year. I feel so good to get that back out.
Great.
Whew. All right.
That
So,
phone
guys,
number haunts my dreams.
yeah, 925-915-1978 for any referrals. Guys, contact John. Stalk Matt. Stalk me. Have a great day. Because why, Matt? Because we out of here. Peace out, ninjas.